And hi there, everybody. It is Thursday night, the 2nd of May. Hope your May has been off to a good start. I'm Nate Eaton. This is Courtroom Insider coming to you live tonight from Boise, Idaho. Another day in the Chad Daybell murder trial, day 15. And we are now up to, I believe, around 45 witnesses. I got my witness list a little mixed up, so I'm going to fix it and give you a complete update. 45 witnesses or so, and boy, what a day. What a day today was. A lot to talk about. We had 4 powerful women on the stand today, and Detective Stubbs at the end of the day with body camera footage that we had not seen before. We had heard the audio. We had not seen the video, and I'm going to play it for you tonight. If you were not in the courtroom, if you weren't watching, you can check it out, and you can see for yourself what you think of the body camera footage. So thank you for being here. It's kind of a dreary day in Boise, cloudy, little chilly. Got to still wear that jacket. Hopefully it warms up in the weekend, and we can get spring here before we know it. Here we go. Kay, Heather, Mom, and more. That's who was on the stand today. We are going to talk about the 5 witnesses who testified on behalf of the state. We are still in the state's case, getting closer and closer to the defense case, getting closer and closer to a verdict. Kay Woodcock was on the stand. Angela Yancey, she was on the stand. She's the one that handles benefits for the school system where Tammy worked. We also had Sheila Daybell, Chad Daybell's mom, on the stand. Heather Daybell, his sister-in-law. Detective David Stubbs. We are going to play that body camera footage, and we of course will remember JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. And of course, I want to take your questions. Before we get started, I must have cursed the jury last night or something when I said, I believe it was last night, maybe the night before, that we haven't had any issues with the jury in either Lori's case or Chad's case. They've all been there every day, haven't had any toothaches, haven't had any emergencies. Well, guess what? Today, we showed up, and the judge said that one of the jurors was sick and wasn't able to make it. And so that juror was dismissed. I believe it was juror number 4. Could have been number 3. Number 4, I know exactly who he is. I'd say a man a couple years older than me, perhaps. Sat in the front row in the middle. So he's now gone. So we have 17 jurors. That means 12 jurors and 5 alternates now. It'll get really problematic if the 5 alternates start to drop off. Hopefully that does not happen. But what it means is that when the time comes for the jury to take the case, the judge, by Idaho statute, the clerk and the judge will draw juror numbers out of a hat, out of a whatever, and those jurors are alternates, and they don't go in and deliberate. So 1 juror gone, we still have 17. So kind of an interesting way to start this very memorable and interesting day. Let's get right to Kay Woodcock. She was witness number 1 on the stand. I wanted to show this beautiful photo of Kay with her grandson, JJ, right after JJ was born. Kay talked about with the prosecution how JJ came into their life. So JJ was born at 2.5 pounds. He was born premature. There were drugs in his system. His biological father was Kay's son, but he was unable to take care of him because of drug issues. Kay has said this publicly, said it on the stand today. So little JJ ended up going home with Kay and with Larry. And they fell in love with JJ. He had to stay in the hospital for several weeks until he was able to come home. And after several weeks, some time with Kay and Larry, Lori and Charles asked and discussed with Kay and Larry if they could adopt JJ. So after some time, Kay and Larry agreed that, and they changed his name to Joshua Jackson. And Lori and Charles became his parents legally. And Kay and Larry missed him really, really bad, Kay said. They would go see him as often as they could. And whether that was in Arizona or Texas or Hawaii, Lori and Charles were moving a lot. But Larry and Kay still made the effort to go see him. They were running a business, so they were busy. They had life, but they wanted to see their grandson. And this happened for, several years as JJ's growing up. They're going to see him, to talk with him, and hang out with him. And they knew that he had his special need challenges, autism, ADD, things like that, but still loved him, of course. Well, then Lori starts to disappear around the beginning of 2019. And Kay went to help Charles pack up his stuff and move from Arizona to Texas, to Houston. Houston's about 150 miles from where Kay and Larry live in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So Kay said, I'm going to go help you. We'll move you closer. We can see JJ. I'll be here to help you when you have to travel for work. And that's what she did. And Lori was... No one really knew where Lori was or what Lori was doing. Well, we know now, but at the time they did not know. Here's a little bit of the testimony from Kay when she talked about that period of time in her life.
At that time, do you know if Charles expected to reconcile, or do you know if he expected a divorce?
No, he was headed for divorce because he was actually the day he was murdered on July 11th, he had made arrangements to meet with a friend who was going to show him a house to lease not far from Lori's.
Right. And you just mentioned he died on July 11th, 2019.
Yes.
And are you aware of how he died?
2 gunshot wounds to the chest.
Okay. Are you aware if Charles Vallow had a life insurance policy?
Yes.
Did you ever have occasion to speak with him about that policy?
We did in February of 19. He said that...
Judge, I'm going to object. It's hearsay.
Sustain.
All right. Did you ever have a conversation with Charles Vallow about you being the beneficiary on his life insurance policy?
Yes.
Did you make any commitments to him about what you would do with that money if you were to receive it?
Yes.
What commitments did you make to Charles Vallow?
He had $1 million life insurance policy, and because of Lori acting the way she was acting.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. It's
Okay.
non-responsive.
Sustain.
What commitment did
The
you make to
commitment
Charles?
I made was to give each of Charles's 2 adult sons each $250,000 out of the $1 million, which I did do in January of 2020. And then Charles said the other 50% was for me and Larry, because we were going to end up raising JJ if anything happened to him. That was the conversation, a very short conversation. I never knew if he followed through and changed it.
So that was the only conversation you had with him?
Yes.
Okay, so he did change it. And then we learned today that he actually changed it back to Lori in April. But then sometime it was changed back to Kay because she ultimately got the payout, and there's, been no issue about that. Well, Lori, after, Charles is shot, she would help Charles out with his business. She'd do his books. She had access to his email. She had his passwords, access to the bank accounts, things like that. And she had touched base with Brandon Boudreaux after the attempted shooting of his life down in Arizona, and they hired a PI. They agreed to split the cost. Kay would pay half, Brandon would pay the other half. And she had Charles's computer and printer, and one night she couldn't get the printer to work. She was frustrated. She went to bed. She woke up the next day around 4. She said she felt like a urge to get out of bed and try to get that printer working. And up on the screen of the computer pops Charles's email account. And she logs in. He used 3 passwords, and she knew all 3, and the first one got her right in, and there was an Amazon order. Someone had purchased something on his Amazon and had sent it to Rexburg on Pioneer Road. She got in touch with the PI and Brandon, and they walked her through how to find the search history. And she went into the search history there on the Amazon account. Remember, Charles is dead, has been dead for some time, a couple of months, and Lori's on the run, and they cannot get in touch with JJ. Lori was avoiding all the calls, all the texts, all the emails, all the requests to simply see JJ. And so Kay was, frustrated. She wanted to see her grandson. Well, she goes into the search history, and here is what she found.
What did you see?
jaw dropping. I saw a search for malachite wedding rings. There was one purchased actually for $35 or $36.99. I saw searches for women's beach wedding dresses. I saw that she looked at or maybe purchased two, I don't remember, a yellow bikini, not a bikini, a yellow one-piece bathing suit. And another search was men's beach clothes, men's for like linen beach clothes. And a size large is what she was looking at. And it was a white shirt and white pants that like you would wear on a beach, linen type clothes.
Okay.
And that
Do you
search,
recall what date that search was performed?
was performed, I was just about to say that, October the 2nd of 2019. I read that November the 8th, but the search was actually done on October 2nd, 2019. And that was before Tammy's death.
All right.
Okay, October 2nd. I was just Googling. I believe that is the day that Brandon Boudreaux was shot at. I'm pretty sure. Let me look. So, as he is getting shot at, shoot, I don't have. I'm pretty sure it was that day. If it was not that day, it was around that time. Also, that's the time that Lori and Chad, sometimes Alex, were going to the storage unit that we talked about, that I did the story on many years ago. Kay described, just how stunning it was that she couldn't get in touch with her grandson, and she was trying to raise the alarm with different agencies, saying, I can't get in touch with him. Obviously, we know that because of her persistence, the police in Rexburg went over to that house in Idaho to try to find JJ. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes when we show you the body camera of that first encounter. John Pryor had a couple of questions for Kay, nothing too deep, and then she was done. Remember, in Lori Vallow's trial, Kay was witness 1. They started the whole thing off with her. Obviously, they waited a little bit in this case because maybe she's not as dramatically connected to Chad as she was to Lori. We know that. But that is what she testified on. Well, then we had Angela Yancey take the stand. Now, Angela Yancey is the person who worked for the school district in Sugar-Salem. She was the one that would coordinate the benefits and the life insurance policies and all of that stuff. And she explained the policies that the Daybells had. So Chad's policy from the time that Tammy Daybell started with the district until the time she died went from $10,000 to $20,000. Tammy's policy went from $60,000 when she started to $130,000. Now let me explain. $10,000 was just given to all employees, and then they signed up for an additional $50,000 life insurance, like the base, the minimum. So they gave the complimentary, you get $10,000 no matter what, and then you get the extra $50,000 that they paid for. And then there was that significant increase in September. The open enrollment for the district was in September, end of August to early September. So about a month before she died, it was upped. Side note, a few years ago, more than a few years ago. When we had our first child in 2013, Erica and I, we had just bought our first house, and it was a miracle that we could even afford the house. Everybody thinks if you're on television, you make tons of money, and you don't unless you're like, on a big show, a huge show. You make decent money if you're in a bigger city, but you don't make a ton of money. Anyway, we bought the house, and we had Emmy, and I remember bringing Emmy home and thinking, Erica had been working full time until we had the baby, and she had decided that she wanted to be home with Emmy at least until she started school. And so we were fully reliant on my salary. And I remember thinking, nothing can happen to me. I cannot, because if I die, this house, what are they going to do? Where are they going to live? Who's going to take care of? I mean, I got in like new dad worried mode. Went online. I did a search for life insurance policies. I think I had the base, because before then I had like been, a single guy. I didn't care. I didn't have life insurance, but now I had a home and a child. I did a search online. I remember I found a policy we could afford. The nurse came over and drew my blood, and I did the health test, and we got approved, and it was $250,000 for the policy. And I still remember thinking, that's not enough. That's not enough. I tell you all this to say that it's interesting to me that this shows that Tammy was clearly the breadwinner of the home, of the family, or at least the bringing in the money, because she had more life insurance even before they upped the life insurance to the $130,000. Chad Daybell had $10,000. Sure, there were probably other policies. We haven't heard if Chad had another policy. Maybe he did, and maybe this one was just lower. But it was interesting to me that here Chad believed he was the patriarch, the leader, the chosen one, all of this. Would he not have the higher life insurance policy? I mean, I know now that he's facing insurance fraud charges, so we know why. But mind-blowing to me, this is how much Tammy was making in the school district. $16,000 a year, working 35 hours a week. I thought for sure that was a mistake. I thought there's no way. And divided out the math, that's about $9.62 an hour. That's the number I come up with. And $8.79, not even $9 an hour. So around $8.80 an hour. Unless that's what they said in court today. I mean, she was not making a lot. Well, then it makes you wonder, how do they live? Chad Daybell, they said yesterday, the other insurance broker said that he made around $30,000 from his speaking engagements and his books. So that's $46,000 a year. It just is surprising to me, but that's the numbers they came out with. So that's kind of a sidetrack. I get so interested in the numbers and how you can afford to live, but they were apparently doing it, and they had a decent sized property out there. So maybe there was revenue coming in from other sources. We don't know at this point. Well, Tammy, of course, died suddenly, weeks after her life insurance policy went up. She died on a Saturday. First thing Monday morning, he's at the school district talking to Miss Yancey, saying, what do I need to do to cash out on the policy? She said, well, I need a copy of the death certificate. He said, I have 8 of them right here. 8? She was surprised. She said, okay, you need to fill out this form. We'll send in all the paperwork. And then when it gets back, take this form with you, fill it out, bring it back. When you come in, we'll get it all processed. She said this was highly unusual because most times when employees would die, she had to chase down the family and be like, oh, by the way, you have life insurance. You have a policy. Not here. Chad was there. Then Chad came back after he'd filled out the form and had everything that he needed, and she was gone. She was on vacation. And they told him she won't be back until the 30th. First thing on the 30th, guess who was in the office? Chad Daybell. The 30th, remember the wedding was on November 5th. So that same week, or at least within a week and a half, Chad Daybell was there trying to get the $130,000. And he got it. He got it. She processed the paperwork. They sent him the check. He was paid out. That's why he's facing insurance fraud. So, a lot of this stuff stuck out, and John Pryor on cross-examination wanted to ask Miss Yancey why this particular incident stood out, what this particular circumstance stood out.
How many employees with this insurance working for the district did you oversee?
Sugar, it was about 200 employees.
Okay. And of those 200 employees, you seem to have very specific recollections of exactly what Mr. Daybell said to you. I find that interesting. Is there a reason why?
I believe any incident that is a bit traumatic sticks in your memory.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
The prosecutor went on to ask what was traumatic about this. She said the fact that Tammy died so quick and he was in there so quick, the fact that he was remarried so quick, the fact that 2 children disappeared. Of course she's going to remember that. And that's what she said. I would imagine too, not many school employees die. And so when you have one that does, and when you have someone come in so quickly, that one's going to stick out in your mind. Well, then we heard from Sheila Daybell, and I've never spoken with Sheila. I may have spoken with her husband, but I don't think so. I've spoken with some of their kids, and they have all been so polite. I tried to speak with Chad. He didn't really want to talk to me. You might know that, but they've been so polite to me. And Sheila showed up. I had heard she would be here today, that she would be testifying. She has an escort with her, which witnesses can have an escort if they want. She's actually much younger than I thought she would look. And she took the stand. I cannot imagine my mom coming to my murder trial and testifying. First of all, I'm never going to have a murder trial, but excuse me, if my mom had to testify, can you imagine? I called my mom actually at lunch and we talked about this case. She watched for the first time. She's watched this program and she's read about it, but she actually watched the trial this afternoon, and I won't share what she sent me and her thoughts, but there was Sheila Daybell. And Sheila Daybell, as I said, just seems like a very sweet woman who was thrown into this. She talked about the last time she saw Tammy Daybell was October 13th, 2019. There was a baby blessing in Springville. She and Jack went up to Idaho. Sorry, there was a baby blessing in Idaho. She and Jack went up there to see the baby, to see the family. And then she got a call. And Jack got a call on the day that Tammy died. They immediately drove up to Rexburg. She said that the children were distraught. She said that Chad was distraught. They went to the funeral, of course. They were the grandparents of these kids. They still are. They were Chad's parents. And then a few weeks after the funeral, they met up for dinner with Chad in Idaho Falls. And here's what happened.
At some time, did you learn that Chad Daybell had moved out of the residence that he had shared with Tammy?
Yes,
Do you remember approximately when you learned that?
I don't remember a certain date.
Okay. Could you estimate approximately how many weeks after Tammy's death that happened?
Oh, maybe 2 to 3 weeks.
Were you surprised to find out that Chad had moved out of the residence?
Yeah.
I want to talk to you specifically about the middle of November of 2019. Did you and Jack travel to Idaho?
We did.
Did you meet with Chad at a Texas Roadhouse
Yes.
in Idaho Falls?
Yes.
Was it dinner time, lunchtime?
Dinner time.
Okay. Now you and Jack met Chad at the Texas Roadhouse. Was somebody else there?
Yes.
Who was that?
Lori Vallow.
Had you ever met Lori Vallow before?
No.
During that dinner, did Chad tell you and Jack anything about his relationship with Lori Vallow?
I don't think he did as much as Lori did.
Okay. What did Lori tell you?
Well, she just we noticed that they had these rings on, and my husband said, "Are you engaged?" And they said, "No, we're married."
Were you surprised?
Yeah,
Did they tell you when they had gotten married?
no,
Now, on November 13th of 2019, this was approximately a month after Tammy's death.
mhm,
Is that why you were surprised?
yeah, I was.
Okay. Did Chad or Lori tell you anything about whether or not Lori had been married before?
Chad didn't.
Did Lori?
Yes.
What did Lori tell you?
Oh, that she'd been married before?
Yes.
Well, she just said that her husband had recently died,
Did she say how he had died?
heart attack.
When Lori said that her husband had died of a heart attack, what did Chad say, if anything?
I don't remember any specific mention.
Okay.
What a patient, loving mom. I don't think my mom would be that patient with me if my wife Erica died and 3 weeks later we're having a steak at Texas Roadhouse with delicious rolls, by the way. And those tater skins, oh my gosh. Anyway, sorry, food gets me. My mom would have more to say to me if I showed up with another lady at the dinner table at a restaurant. And my dad said, "So are you guys going to get married?" And I said, "We are. We are married." I just can't imagine how my parents would react. How would your parents react? How would you react if it was your kid? That's my question. Sheila's testimony was quite short. John Pryor had a couple questions on cross. He talked about how Chad was an introvert, a little shy, and just kind of a humble guy, and that Lori Vallow was very different than Tammy, very different personality types. They talked about how Lori said she did have a daughter who had died, and I'm sure it was just kind of an awkward meal all around. After Sheila testified, Heather Daybell took the stand. For those who haven't seen Heather, this is Heather Daybell. She had recently had surgery, so she was having an issue. She couldn't, her voice, she was still recovering, and so her voice wasn't as strong as it could be, but she did a great job. She was on the stand, for several hours today and didn't have to take a break. She talked a lot about the relationship that she had with Chad and with Tammy, and how Chad and Tammy moving to Idaho kind of ruined everything. Heather said that she and Matt, her husband, had for years decided that it would be best if they lived away from family. And they moved to Rexburg, and they loved it. This was their place. Matt built up a successful practice. They had a beautiful home. I went and spoke with them several years ago for an off-the-record conversation, and their house is beautiful. It leans up right up against the river, and around 2014, 2015, Chad comes along and says, we're going to move to Idaho. And Heather's like, "No, please." I mean, imagine if you finally find your place and your sibling who you don't really want to move by you says they're going to move by you. Well, Rexburg's not a big place, but there's different parts of Rexburg. So they could live here and Chad could live here. There could be different places. Idaho Falls, Rigby, St. Anthony, Sugar Salem. There's plenty of places to move. Chad and Tammy end up a half a mile away from Heather's house. In fact, when somebody's at our door, when the Tammy walked in that house with Chad when they were house hunting, she said, "I don't like this house." And that's the one that Chad chose. Here's how Heather described kind of their relationship about why Chad moved.
did.
When
Yes.
did it change?
2014, when he started talking about end of times events and discussing a book that he had published for Julie Rowe.
We'll come back to that, but how did this relationship change at that point?
I was concerned about the things that he was telling the family and telling Matt and I. I was not comfortable with what he was informing us with.
Will you please elaborate to the jury, what were the things that Chad was saying or teaching you that caused you the concerns?
He indicated that there would be an earthquake that would be happening in 2015, and he was kind of making us aware and preparing us for all of these end times events that were going to happen and cause a lot of destruction in Utah, in particular Salt Lake area.
Did he explain to you why he believed those events would occur?
Those were events that Julie Rowe had seen in a near-death experience. And so he had talked about those things with her as he published her book. And then he indicated he was seeing those things in vision as well.
So Chad is someone who had expressed to you and your family these visions that he had had?
That he could see beyond the veil and see future events.
Were there other things that he explained to you that caused you concern, other teachings in addition to that?
At that point, it was mainly that. It was just these end of times events and when they would happen.
Later, were there other teachings or things that he would say to you or your family that caused you concern?
When he informed us he was thinking of moving his family to Rexburg in 2014, or 15, whenever that was, it started, we actually had a conversation with him asking him exactly what it was he thought was going to happen. And we had a pretty detailed conversation.
I'd like to pause you there. To the best you can recall, can you tell the jury when did that conversation occur?
That conversation was when they came out, Chad, Tammy, and some of their children came out to Rexburg to look for homes. And Matt and I sat with Chad in our home. That would have been summertime 2015.
And what happened in that conversation?
It was, excuse me, it was asking him point blank to give us the details of why he felt he needed to make this move. And he indicated that, and in particular, the houses that he was looking at were very close to our home. And we had some concerns with that. He told my husband and I that we would become great leaders in this gathering of people that would happen because of all the destruction in Utah, that our land where we lived would help in that, and that our home would become like a church or a temple. He was telling us those kinds of things. And that he felt like he needed to be in Rexburg with his family because the headquarters in Salt Lake of the church would end up having to move to Rexburg when all this destruction happened.
So Heather didn't believe it. Heather didn't buy it. Matt didn't buy it, but they, you know, what do you do? It's your brother, and Chad moves to Rexburg with his kids. Heather said she took over some bread to Tammy. They were in the same ward, so they see each other on Sunday. A ward is the congregation that's divided up by geographical regions. And Heather said she broke down and cried when they moved there because she knew Chad was teaching these things, and she didn't want him to bring that to her friends, to her neighborhood, to her church members. Well, he did. And after some time, Heather became worried about Tammy and her mental health, and if she was making friends and if she was settling in. Remember, Tammy had lived in Springville for most, if not all of her life. And suddenly they're moving to Rexburg, to this rural community, this, tiny town right outside of Rexburg, which, has some stuff, but it's not like Springville, Utah. So Heather was worried, and Heather said, we're going to invite Tammy and Chad over to talk. And so she or Matt contacted Chad, and this is what happened. This is what Chad said.
Was there ever a time that you had any confrontations with Chad in your backyard?
We had, once they had moved to Rexburg, so again, summer of 2015, shortly after that, I was concerned for Tammy and wanted to know how she was doing. So we asked Chad and Tammy to come over and have a visit with us. And he indicated that that would be fine, but to direct our questions or whatever we wanted to say at Chad and not at Tammy, because she would get upset at us if we directed anything at her.
Had you had any history prior to that with Tammy getting upset with you about anything?
No.
And to be clear, it was Chad who gave you this instruction.
Yes.
So in that conversation, did you follow Chad's instruction to only talk to him, or did you talk directly to Tammy?
I did not follow that instruction. Tammy was a grown woman, so I directed my questions at her.
Had you prior to that or since then, ever seen any other behavior that may have caused you concern between Chad and Tammy?
No, they seemed like a happy couple.
Before or since that, did Chad ever try to stop Tammy from talking, or others from talking directly to her?
Not that I'm aware of.
So that was the only incident?
Mhm.
What do you think about that? You know, sometimes my wife and I will go to dinners or public events or parties or wherever, and I cannot imagine if she found out if I told someone to not talk to her, to only talk to me. You know what happens? I'm going to get her on. I'm going to see if she's free. You know what happens? I always tell her, honey, don't talk. Like you like, sometimes she's a little blunt, and I'm like, I try to be careful to, not offend. Funny, because I'm in news. I don't know if she's home.
Hello.
Hey, hon, what are you doing?
We have a bunch of kids over the house.
Oh, okay. I'll be quick. I'm on Courtroom Insider live right now, and so are you.
Hello.
My cough's getting better, I promise. So today it came out in court. Did you see court at all today, the trial?
I did not.
It came out that Heather Daybell testified that she was concerned when Tammy moved to Rexburg that Tammy wasn't, making friends, that she was lonely. So she wanted to invite Tammy and Chad over to talk just to make sure Tammy was okay. So she told Chad this, and Chad said, that's fine, but please direct all questions to me. Don't talk to her.
What?
So I wanted to know your thoughts on if I ever did that to someone and said, don't only talk to me, don't talk to her. How would you, what are your thoughts on that? See, I can't even explain.
Having a talk, that's for sure.
I'd be having a talk?
With me.
Right.
I just don't think that we have the relationship dynamic that could ever be a possibility. Also, my own personality, I don't think that could be a possibility. But that, I don't know. And nobody would think that's a warning sign that something more nefarious was happening?
Well, Heather said that she was asked, so when Tammy came over, did you only talk to Chad? She said, no, Tammy is a grown woman. I talked to her. She's not a little girl. Yeah, but what would you do if you were concerned about a loved one, a family member who moved in, you wanted to go talk to them to get a feel for it, and someone said this to you, like, you must only talk to me, not her?
There would definitely be a conversation there. I generally try to keep my nose out of other people's business in their relationships, but I would definitely be taking someone aside if I didn't say it. If I was a relative of Tammy's or Chad's and that was occurring, it depends who's related to who, right? Because in my family, we would be having a sit-down discussion or maybe a loud discussion about, you don't tell them what to do. You are not the boss of them. They were their own autonomous person before they met you.
Right.
That's just, I mean, that I'd be like, do you know you're in an abusive relationship if you have to have permission to speak?
Yeah, and I mean, I want to be clear. We're not judging
Not judging.
Tammy at all.
Let me
Like,
say,
yeah.
yes. But I also can see when you have been in an abusive relationship and you don't understand. And I will say, and I am a faithful Latter-day Saint, the culture is very, oh, what your husband, you know, he's the household, the leader. And I think a lot of people lean very heavy into that. But yes, well, if my husband says that, that's what we should do.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that that is what is taught in our church, but I do see how people sometimes get it twisted and are very subservient to their husbands first, where I feel that God has given you good sense and it doesn't need to be that way. You can make your own decisions and, you know, be respectful of your spouse still in the same handful. But that would be very concerning to me to find out if one of my sisters, their husband, would have to be the mediator for our conversations.
Yeah, before I called you, I said that normally I'm not, when we go out, I'm not telling people don't talk to her. I'm telling you, please don't talk a lot so we can hurry and get home.
Yes, that's very true.
Like, don't stay all night. Like, now I'm like, sometimes should we drive separate cars so she can socialize and I can go home? All right.
Well, they know. I do my own thing now.
Yes.
So Nate can have his quiet time.
Thank you, honey.
Good night, everyone.
I'll call you when I'm done. Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
That was not planned. I just thought I'd bring on her perspective. Again, we're not judging Tammy at all, but now I'm sure looking back and hearing stuff like all of this, it's hard. It's got to be hard for the family. It has to be so hard. So here's an interesting twist that came up, and I forgot to pull up the photo. Remember the talk of the stairs? We've been talking about this all week, the stairs. And so many of you have asked, why is this such a big deal about the stairs? Well, John Pryor brought it up with the witness on Monday, about how she said that Chad told her at the funeral that Tammy was going to go either upstairs or downstairs to bed, and there were stairs, and John Pryor stood up and said, are you aware this is a one-story house? So he immediately put it in the mind of the jury that, oh, it's a one-story house. Even though Hermosillo had testified the first day that they went upstairs to serve Chad the warrant, even though in the car exchange with Emma, Chad had said there's the mattress upstairs. Remember how everyone's like, why didn't the prosecution fix it? Why didn't they go back and cross on that lady, the cousin who had testified, and say, isn't there two stories? Well, she didn't know. She said she'd never been there. But guess who had been there? Heather Daybell. And not only that, the Gilberts had been there, and yesterday they testified about the upstairs. And John Pryor got into the utilities. Was there utilities up there? Was there not? Well, guess what? They didn't talk about the utilities today, but there was a piano set up, like an electric piano that you'd need to plug in. There was, Mark had his instruments up there. They showed pictures. Heather testified. They showed the stairs going down and up on the attachment to the home. So I think that's been taken care of. But it was a really kind of a learning experience for me. Hold on, Erica is texting me. Erica said she's sorry if she felt judgy. She didn't mean it that way, and she may have opened up a can of worms to let you know that. But anyway, so the stairs issue, hopefully the jury clearly knows, because they have seen the stairs, that there was another part of the house. Why was it such a big deal? Because if John Pryor can put any doubt in the minds of the jurors, that's his job. So if the jurors are like, wait a second, if it's a one-story house, should we believe that girl, what she said? Should we believe anything she said? Should we believe anything they said about this? And now it's been cleared up. Okay, so they called that portion of the house the Cozy Cone after the cars, the cone, kind of a cute name. And they shared pictures. Well, Heather went on to talk about that she learned Tammy had died when she and Matt were in Las Vegas for a work conference. They got a call, and Tammy was dead. And Matt went to his conference, and Heather called Chad to express her condolences. And when she did, Chad said Tammy had coughed. She threw up in the night. Same story he's told before. And then Heather said, well, when's the funeral? And he said, Tuesday. This was Saturday. And Heather and Matt, again, are in Vegas. And she goes, is there any way you could push it back a little bit? We're out of town. We want to come. And another family member was out of town too. And Chad said, no, it's going to be Tuesday. So they left the conference to get up to Springville on Tuesday. And do you know, one second, I just wanted to make, oh, here we go. The opening song at the funeral was called Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel. Now, this is a song that is like a pioneer LDS type hymn. It's about working. Put your shoulder to the wheel. Push along. Do your duty with a heart full of song. We all have work. Don't be a jerk. Put your shoulder to the wheel. You know, that's not the words. Don't be a jerk. Let no one shirk is the word. Put your shoulder to the wheel. So Heather thought that was weird, that was the song at the funeral. She thought it was weird that only the 5 children and Chad participated. And Chad was late for the luncheon. So usually how it works, at least how it worked in this case, is they had the funeral at the church. They then went to the cemetery and did the gravesite service and put the casket in the ground. And then they went back to the church where there was a luncheon for the family and friends. Chad was late for the luncheon to the point that Jason, the brother-in-law, stood up and said, we're just going to start without him. I've since talked to some family members who think Chad wanted to stay at the cemetery to make sure Tammy was completely buried. While most of us leave the cemetery and let the funeral people there at the cemetery take care of the body and this casket and all that, we just, trust that it'll go in. He wanted to be sure that Tammy was really in the ground. He was late for the service, the funeral luncheon, and then a couple of weeks later, Heather found out Chad was married. So what did Heather do? She called him. Here's what happened.
I had learned that he had gotten remarried and that his children were struggling and upset. So I reached out in a group text to his children and let them know that I was there for them if they needed me, that they were upset. And that resulted in Chad calling me.
And please explain to the jury how the conversation went between you and Chad at that point.
I answered, he said, this is Chad. And he was upset with me and told me I had been a problem for him his whole life. And I asked him, who is this person you've married? And he explained her name was Lori. Would I like to meet her? And I said, no, I would not. And then I asked him what happened to Tammy. And he said she died of a pulmonary embolism because she had gained 40 pounds.
Now, earlier you've testified that you were seeing Tammy at least in church every week.
Yes.
Had you observed a 40-pound weight gain in Tammy?
I don't generally keep track of people's weight gain or loss, but I had not noticed a big increase in weight gain on Tammy, no.
How did you react to that when he gave that explanation?
I remember being so flustered by that explanation because he had given me a different one weeks before that I was just upset, and he indicated to me, I'm going to be living in Hawaii, so you don't have to worry about me anymore. And that was the end of the conversation.
Did you challenge him on the different explanations in that phone call?
I don't remember challenging him because I was so shocked by that I didn't challenge him on that.
Besides the different explanations as to Tammy's death, was there anything else that was shocking you in that conversation?
Just expressing to him, how can you get married this quickly after your wife has just passed away?
Did he give an answer to that?
He said that he'd met her about a year before, so he'd known her, and that she had lost a husband to a heart attack. And it just was, they were there for each other and it just worked out that they'd get married.
You mentioned that one of the first things he said in the phone call was to the effect of, "You've been a problem for me my whole life."
Yes.
What did you take that to mean?
I said to him, your whole life? I didn't understand what I had done to him his whole life, that he would consider me a problem.
Did he explain?
No.
So Heather tried to raise the alarm about Chad, especially when Chad went to one of their children and said, "You are going to be one of the leaders in this group for the second coming." Heather went and told him, "Don't groom my kids. Don't do this." She had gone to church leaders to try to say, what he's teaching is not in line with the church doctrine. Chad was he was the secretary, the executive secretary for the bishopric, which is the leadership of the ward. John Pryor made a big deal about this, that Chad served in that position, and Heather was the Stake Relief Society president, meaning there were 10 wards in this stake, and Heather was over the 10 women that were leading these wards. And she sent an email. She didn't recall exactly when, but the date on the email, it was a forward from Alice Gilbert, the woman that testified yesterday, who was the Ward Relief Society president, that she sent out to all of the women in her ward. So ultimately, it sounds like this email ended up in the hands of all of the women in the ward or in the stake, or at least most of them, where Heather openly talked about, the kind of the situation. I guess I shouldn't say openly, because she really didn't go into her deep feelings about it. But at the time, she did. And I'm not really sure how the letter pertains to the case. John Pryor really kind of went down the road with her talking about it. But one interesting thing that I had not heard before, or at least I don't remember hearing it, is the time that Julie Rowe visited Heather's house with Chad and Tammy and the kids. And this is what she said happened.
You were asked a number of questions about Julie Rowe.
Yes.
Are you aware of whether or not Julie Rowe has been excommunicated from the church?
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. Foundation, relevance.
I'll sustain it on relevance grounds.
You were concerned about Chad's association with Julie Rowe, is that correct?
I was.
And why were you concerned about that relationship?
Again, because of what was contained in the book that he was publishing for her. And when I did observe them together, it was concerning to me, their personal relationship.
What do you mean by that?
Judge, this is going beyond the scope.
Overruled.
They seemed particularly close. He brought her to my home on one occasion, and it made a few of us uncomfortable, myself uncomfortable.
Speaking for yourself only,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean by they were particularly close? Can you explain your observations?
What I observed, he brought her to our home to show her our land, and it goes back to a river. And so they walked along this land, went back to the river. What I observed was that Chad and Julie were communicating very close to each other, and Tammy and her children were kind of following behind. It made me feel bad for Tammy that Chad appeared so close to Julie.
Was there anything else that you observed in that relationship that was making you uncomfortable?
That's the only time I saw Julie Rowe in person.
Okay. I have heard from several people that Chad had never really expressed his near-death experience to his family, to his friends, until after Julie Rowe published her mega hit book about her near-death experience, and then Chad decided to write his. Julie Rowe has come out and said that Chad Daybell sexually assaulted her or raped her. I mean, I don't. So there's that. I don't know. And the next question many of us have is, well, did Chad have a relationship with Julie Rowe? Based on that testimony of what Heather said, sounded like they were close. Was she the woman in Chad's life before Lori? And I don't know. But it's interesting to hear Heather observe that Tammy was there with the kids kind of just following along. And how demeaning to in a way to have a woman there. I can't imagine that if I'm there with a woman and I'm whispering and talking and my wife's behind me with my kids. But that's what Heather saw. The other issue that John Pryor really brought up is, I guess Chad was taking his truck or his car to the LDS church often, maybe daily sometimes, to write his books. Heather was concerned because a church building should not be used for that. You shouldn't go... the church building shouldn't be used for that. Plus, Heather knew the type of books that Chad was writing, and so she was concerned that he was going there to write his books, these type of books that weren't in line with the church doctrine. And so she raised that concern, and Pryor brought that up just as an aside. There's so many things we could talk about Heather's testimony. I would say go listen. It was captivating, the whole thing. She really gave a lot of good insight from what was happening behind the scenes with the family. And maybe more family members will get called. I don't know. I have not heard of that as far as the Daybell family is concerned. But I would imagine we will hear from Samantha Gwillem, Tammy's sister, and maybe her husband, and maybe some others in the family as time goes on. Last part of the day, we heard from Detective Stubbs. He's with the Rexburg Police Department, or was. He's retired now, and now he's a mechanic, he says. Good for him. Maybe I'll bring over my car if I have a problem. He talked about going over to Chad Daybell's or Lori Vallow's apartment in Rexburg when the kids were reported missing. He did this surveillance, the original surveillance on Chad and Lori. Remember how they went to Hobby Lobby? He followed them. Then they went to Cafe Rio. He went home at that time. But he was the first officer to make contact with Lori. Now, we have heard the audio from his body camera. We have not seen the footage, unless you've been in the courtroom. You have not seen it until now, until today. We saw it. The quality is not the best because it's from a screen through a Zoom camera, but I want to play it for you. You can see how Lori was reacting, and I'd love to hear your impact. This is when Rexburg Police first went to do the welfare check on J.J. Vallow, November of 2019 in Rexburg, and this is what happened when they showed up. I apologize that it is not clearer. The audio should kick in here in just a second. They're going to knock on her door here. One day we'll get the clean audio, the clean video copy so that you can see it.
Her car's off here.
Here we go.
What? In the back. It's blue. Blue Subaru. Hi. You Lori? Lori, I'm Lieutenant Ball of the Police Department. How are you? You got a minute? You alone or you got help?
My brother's here.
Okay. This is Detective Stubbs. Hello.
Sweet Jim.
So, we're here.
Yeah, this is a big mess. I just talked to the guy on the phone.
And what did he ask you?
He was just saying that he wanted to do a well check on JJ.
So, JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh, hey. You got a notepad?
No? Oh, you want?
No. Come here. Mind if he comes in?
Oh,
So,
sorry.
who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her son has autism. Her name's Melanie Good. I gave him all the information on the phone.
Okay, so he can call.
Yeah.
Perfect. This part.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little
What is it?
concerned
Why?
because, well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking and they got a bad vibe that like something was going on here because, nobody knew anything about a child. They weren't talking.
It's because a
What's
lot of
going
stuff
on?
that was going on. If you want to know, it's a lot of stuff. So
Well, that's why we're concerned, because it just was kind of weird.
it is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me, not the brother that lives here. Obviously, he's kind of my protector. My other brother that was in with my husband, who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance policy. No,
No.
So a lot of stuff has gone on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so I was going to move back to Arizona, put my son back into the school there because I tried to put him in school here, public school, Kennedy.
Okay.
He went for 2 months. We tried it, but he had such a hard time. Now, the person who called is my sister-in-law, but she's his natural grandmother. He's adopted by us. Okay, so her son, who is a drug addict, had a baby with a girl who's a drug addict, and they took him from, CPS took him.
Okay.
Gave him to the grandmother. She came and got him, and then she wanted us to adopt him, which we did. And we loved him.
By
and
us. Who we
my
talking about?
husband and I, who died earlier this year.
Okay.
He passed away. Since he
Sorry.
passed away, she's been trying to fight me for him and being really horrible to me and that kind of stuff. She's kind of the paternal friend.
Okay, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
That's what I
Sorry.
meant. The paternal grandmother.
He has autism and ADHD. He doesn't really talk to people. Like he's very special needs. So I had him in a special needs school there. She was trying to so what happened was my husband, who we were married for 15 years and had raised all these 5 kids together, switched his life insurance policy to her, right? To his sister,
Okay.
who got $1 million when he died, and we got nothing. For me to raise JJ, and all the kids got nothing, and everybody got nothing. She got $1 million. So I knew she was going to try to sue me for him, or yeah, because she now has this $1 million, so she can hire people to help him, and I have nothing.
But you have
nothing,
legal custody.
He's my son. I adopted him when
Right.
he was 2 years. We had him from the time he was 8 months old till 2 years old. So she does nothing and wants to cause me trouble. So I don't tell people the truth about where we are and what we're doing because of those reasons. So I look like a suspect, but I am a good person. Raised all of my kids. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life, but everyone is causing me trouble right now. So
We don't want to cause a lot of trouble. How long have you been here?
we've only been here since September.
Okay.
We moved up here in September. My daughter's going to BYUI.
Your daughter goes to BYU?
Yeah.
Does she live here?
So it's been a nightmare, but I'm going to go back to Arizona so I can put him back in the special needs school. He couldn't do the school here. It was too hard for him. He would scream and cry, take him to school. The principal would have to come out, try to drag him out of the car. Like, this just was too hard. But I just don't tell people where I am. I don't tell her where I am ever. And she doesn't have any legal rights to anything. Like, she's been horrible to me since my husband died.
My understanding, she never called you to try to get the child, hey, I'm interested in the child back, but
I know, but she sends me these emails with like the date and like she's putting up court stuff, like she's documenting. I haven't heard from him in all this time, and so I've told her that he's fine. But
See, and we hadn't heard any of that as far as,
I'm just saying she's doing this as part of that. Is my understanding.
and our only concern in this whole thing
Yeah, it's like
is
he's fine.
the child.
I got it.
And so that's where we're at on the, and then
So
we
I
were just a
called-
little weirded out when, and I understand now that we've heard your side of the story.
It's awful. I feel like I'm being tracked all the time. Like, why are police coming to my car? What did I do?
They said they were not visiting 2 guys, and I'm assuming one's your brother.
Yeah.
Who was the other one? The other guy they were visiting with. There were 2.
Visiting.
Well, we had 2 detectives over here trying to.
Looking for you
Oh.
a little while ago.
Oh, because I was at the store.
And they ran into. Well, probably one of your brothers. in
My
the back
brother
here.
and his friend, probably.
Oh,
They've
who's
been
that?
moving. Chad?
Chad from around here? What's his last name? Yeah, okay. All right.
So it's just a mess. Like, just constantly causing me trouble.
Chad the DAYBELL?
He's an author.
Doesn't he live like out in the, isn't that the Chad Daybell that, yeah, his wife passed away recently? Is that him?
I don't know,
But it is, Chad, D-A-Y-B, yeah.
but it sounds familiar as an
I
author.
think I know one of his, he's got a couple of daughters? Is that the one?
He has lots of kids.
Okay. Hope it's safe. All right. Well, need anything else? Sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
We don't mean to be a
I'm
problem.
sorry that people are constantly knocking on my door. They are looking for me and I just don't want to be found, so.
Have you had problems? Because I think we only had.
Well, the reason I'm moving is because the brother that was going to kill me, that we found emails and texts with my husband at the time, he was showing up here, so he found out where I was and he was knocking on my door.
No, this was your brother?
One of my brothers.
He showed up here and was knocking on your door.
He lives in Kansas.
And you said something about you were getting threatening emails?
Well, no, just after my husband passed, I found emails and texts between them that they were planning all this stuff to get rid of me.
Do we need to worry about him coming over?
Well, that's when I'm moving back. I'm moving, and I'm not gonna be in a place, I'm gonna live with my friend, Melanie, don't tell anybody her name, Gib, because I don't want anything in my name. I put the apartment in my name, but I've been staying over here with my brother because he protects me.
Okay.
He's very
I just
protective
wanna
of
know
me,
if
so.
he shows back up, you know, you can call, take care of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, it's just a nightmare. I mean, I canceled the insurance policy since my husband passed, so there's no money if they kill me. And what are they gonna do with JJ and Tyler? Like, what do people think?
Yeah.
So.
Well, if you have a problem, shows back up, feel free to call us. We'll come and run him off or something. Okay? All right. Okay, get out of your hair. Say goodbye.
Thank you.
What do you think of that? Here's the interesting thing that we didn't see on that tape. They knew that Alex was there. The police knew Lori and Chad were married. They knew they had surveyed them. They had surveillanced them, done surveillance on them. They knew that Tammy was dead. They knew more than they let on. They also knew that she said her brother was there. She said right there, my brother's a protector. They knew he was upstairs because she said he was home, and Detective Stubbs testified that he could see on the wall, like on the stairwell, that somebody was moving back and forth. There was a shadow moving back and forth. So, like, look at that wall behind me. See that? I mean, it was maybe like that. And so he was a little worried for their safety. What if they start to probe a little bit more with Lori? What if they ask to search the house? Something. What's this guy going to do? And remember, they found all of those guns, 43, I think, in that garage. Did he have any upstairs? So the cops leave, and then they come back 10 minutes later because they can't get a hold of Melanie Gibb. And so I'm going to play their follow-up visit just a few minutes later. They go back to the house, and this is what happens.
Not.
Wasn't Melanie the one living up here supposed to be her daughter, Lori's daughter?
No, this was the friend that she's going back down to live with, she said.
Right. She's got a daughter named Melanie.
Let's just see if she will call and have Melanie get a hold of Hope and just do a verification.
They're a little confused over the Melanies, the Melanie Gibb and the Melanie Boudreaux.
Lori? Hi, Lori. Sorry to bother you again. Yeah, we're having Melon get hold of your friend down there.
No. Well, they were going to Frozen 2 today, so they may be after this.
Could you get a hold of her at some point and say, can you please call back the officer that's been trying to call you?
Okay, sure.
'Cause-
Yeah, because I think they are at the movies right now.
Okay,
I'll call her.
he's been trying to call her, our other officer. She's not answering.
Okay.
But if they're at the movie, that's,
Probably at Frozen 2 right now.
yeah.
Because that's one thing he wanted to do.
I'm frozen too.
Yeah. So,
A whole winter here, that's probably why.
yeah. So if she'll just return his call, that'd be great. Okay, thanks.
Okay, and then I believe it was the next day
Yes, sir.
they got the warrant, and Lori and Chad were gone. Now, many of you I know have seen and said, why weren't the police showing more urgency? Why were they so patient with her? Why didn't they search the place right then? Remember, we all have our rights, and at this point, it was a welfare check. I've covered welfare checks before, and a lot of the times it's nothing. They go and they check, and the person's fine, or maybe JJ really was with the friend in Arizona watching a movie, and they find him, and okay, great, case closed. That was not the case, obviously, and the police went back. They searched that house, and it was empty. Well, there was stuff there. It was empty of humans. Lori and Chad were gone. And I believe that's where Detective Stubbs will pick up tomorrow on his testimony. He's back on the stand tomorrow morning. More witnesses as we work our way toward a verdict, toward a finalization. Can't forget JJ and Tylee. There's some beautiful photos of those two adorable kids who, of course, we now know where they were when the police showed up and the condition that they were in. But tonight we remember them and the wonderful joy they brought to life. I know that one of the, somebody who knew Tylee well texted me today and said, I just wanted to thank Alice Gilbert for when she said, Tylee deserves a boyfriend. She deserves a job. She deserves a life. Where is she when she was talking to Chad? And it makes you wonder where she would be now. I mean, she'd be a full-on adult right now. And would she be working? Would she be going to school? Would she be married? Would she have a child? Where would JJ be? So we remember them tonight. We remember Tammy Daybell, whose birthday's coming up, I believe, on Saturday, which is the same day as Matt Daybell's birthday. So, there we go. I hope that I wish if we had a whole nother hour, we could dive in deeper because there was so much today in court. But we have all the witness testimony on our website or on our YouTube channel. You can go check that out. By the way, here is where you can find all of that stuff. There's my Facebook. There's my Instagram, my Twitter, X feed, and my our YouTube channel. Also have Meetin' the Eatons, my family channel. I have to tell you all that you're really melting my heart and kind of giving me and my team a panic attack because you've purchased so many shirts. We have never, ever had this much response when we have sold t-shirts. And the other night, for those of you that are like, what are you talking about? The other night I wore a shirt that said, life goal, keep my mugshot off eastidahonews.com. I wore it here. A couple of you, and it's an old shirt. We don't sell them anymore. A couple of you reached out and said, how can I get one of those? And so I contacted our team in Idaho Falls. I said, do you think we can maybe do a pre-order on these shirts and see if maybe, 10 or so people will want them? And it's been a lot more than 10. I think we're over 600 orders, which is amazing to me. Blowing it up. We're taking orders until tomorrow, Friday. So if you want one of the shirts, this is what it looks like. I'll make this big. It says, life goal, keep my mugshot off East Idaho News. We have small, medium, large, XL, 2X, and 3X. And I'm so sorry. We can only ship in America because of taxes and the tariffs or whatever they call it, when customs and all that. We just can't. And I know so many of you watch overseas, and I am deeply sorry that we can't ship them overseas. So I've heard from many of you, and I'm sorry that we can't do that. But if you want a shirt, $25, that includes shipping. You can get 2 for $40. You can mix and match some of our other shirts on there. And we're going to place the order tomorrow. We'll have the shirts in hopefully end of next week or the following week. And then we will package them up and we will send them out to you. And then when you get them, I want to see you in them. I want you to send me your selfies. And if the trial's still going on, every night I'll show different pictures of people in their mugshot shirts. And I've fully determined that we're going to have to give them to the prosecutors and even John Pryor and the defense attorneys and all that, just to as a gift to thank them. Okay, there we go. Let me get to the questions. We have a lot tonight. First of all, some shout outs. Big shout out to Larry Iratostine. Hi, Larry. Thank you. John and Camille Peck and Sam and Donna Jones. I know a Camille Peck. I don't know if this is the one I know, but thank you very much for watching. And to all of you guys. Jody, why on earth is the house being 1 story or 2, excuse me, such a giant deal? Well, I talked about that earlier, Jody. I think we kind of discussed it, that Pryor was trying to poke holes in the testimony and the experience of the one witness, and that's probably why. So we talked about that. Did Tammy and Lori ever meet? That's a good question. I don't know if there's been ever any documented proof that they did meet. And I haven't heard of any. Tammy was not really going to the conferences, but you would think that maybe they passed at one point or another, but I don't know 100% sure on that. If you know, by chance, if you're connected to the families or you have a photo maybe of them at a conference, please send it to me because I'd love to see that, but I'm not aware of that. Did Tammy's stomach, this is from Leon, did Tammy's stomach have contents? They didn't say that with the medical examiner. Can the stomach still have contents if she was vomiting all night? They did make that point a couple of days ago with a witness that she had, I think John Pryor said like a quarter pounder with French fries that was in her stomach. But you might think if she vomited it out that it wouldn't be in there. But the ME, the actual ME who did the autopsy on her, didn't get into that yesterday. So that was something that John Pryor brought up on cross a few days ago, and it hasn't really come up since. We keep hearing about Tammy's health from her relatives and friends. Why don't they just call in her actual doctor to testify? Well, I think they would if the doctor, and maybe they will, if the doctor knew enough about it. Like, I don't know. I guess you could, I see my doctor once a year when I go in for my annual exam. And I guess you could call him in and he could testify about, if I've had complaints or whatever. But I think I think sometimes too, it's more, does a doctor who saw you 4 months ago know more than your friend who was in a clogging class with you the night before? Do they know more? How were you? How were you out of breath? So perhaps they will call in the doctor. I think the medical examiner's testimony yesterday kind of really laid things out from an expert's point of view that this is where things stood. Chad spent so much time at the BYU library. I wonder if the cops looked into his computer search history at the library. There may be some interesting searches. That's a good question. I don't know if they did, and I don't know how long they keep those searches on those public computers at the library, but good question. Sally, I'm wondering if Alex's wife moved with him to Rexburg when he went to protect Lori. Wasn't she and Lori good friends? Zulema, you're talking about, who we still haven't heard from, hoping soon. Zulema Pastenis. As far as we know, there was never any sign that she moved to Rexburg. She may have visited Rexburg. I don't think she moved there. Remember, too, that Alex did not marry her until the end of November and then in Las Vegas. And then he died like 2 weeks later. And she had a home in Arizona that he was staying in at the time he died. So she, as far as we know, she never moved to Rexburg. Alyssa, have you ever noticed the judge stunned or surprised or big-eyed at a witness answer? Good question. No, Judge Boyce is pretty poker-faced, and he wants everyone in the courtroom to be poker-faced. The only sort of time I've seen him with real emotion is during that hearing a couple of weeks ago with the attorney that filed the last-minute motion to continue the trial. Boyce was mad. He was very mad. And I've heard him kind of get after John Pryor a time or two, like, listen, slow down. You're talking over the witness and stop. Okay, Cindy says, wow, you guys are ordering shirts again. Thank you. Cindy, why did Chad need to ask his neighbors for money to bond out? Why didn't he use his own house and property? Well, he needed $1 million. I don't think his property is worth $1 million. And I'm sure he did look into it to find out. Guess it would depend on how much he owed on the mortgage and things like that. Why did Chad feel he needed to live with the Gilberts? Good question. I don't know. Why did Chad ask the Gilberts to wait before they told anyone about Tammy? I also don't know that either. Tammy was the breadwinner, but did Chad feel he needed to control what she did? It sounds like she was the victim of domestic violence. Well, we kind of talked about that tonight. Yeah, maybe not physical violence, but sounds like there may have been some emotional stuff in there, or definitely a controlling pattern of behavior. Faye, has Judge Boyce ever issued the death penalty on an individual? No, and Judge Boyce technically won't. The jury will. Judge Boyce presides in the case. The jury will decide on the death. It is rare. This is the first, well, so I've covered other death penalty cases, but normally they get resolved before trial and they end up dropping the death penalty because it's part of a plea negotiation. So they drop death, you get life. And this one is going all the way. So this will be his first, could be his only one. I mean, there's a couple of others scheduled right now in his jurisdiction, but we'll see if those go to trial. Where do the witnesses go before testifying? For example, the day around 19 were called. I don't know if 19 were ever called. Maybe you mean 9. They can't all be there at the exact time. Where do they hang out? They put them in separate rooms. There's different rooms in the courthouse. They'll have them wait. Some will be at their hotel. Like if you know that you're an afternoon witness, they'll keep you at the hotel in the morning and bring you over during lunch. There's coordinators doing it all behind the scenes, but they're not all in one room together. They're in separate rooms. In the same way you showed the photo of the professionals on the stand, would you mind showing us photos of the prosecuting team? It's so small on my phone, I can't see what they look like. Sure. Let me show you. And I believe we have some photos. We have a who's who. So let me pull that up and I can show you. I don't know if we have Rocky Wixom on this one, but we should have everybody else. If not, I can try to show you Rocky. So on East Idaho News, we have this who's who page. If you scroll down, there's the Vallows. There's Brandon, Summer, Rex, the uncle. There's Annie Cushing. There's Colby. There's Tammy and Samantha. There's the children on 48 Hours. There's Lori and Melanie. There's Julie Rowe. A lot of talk about her today. There's Julie and Chad. Okay, here's Rob Wood. Here's Lindsay Blake with a bunch of the investigators. This was the press conference where they announced the indictment. There's Lori's attorneys, Jim and John, and there's Chad and his attorney. Oh, what the heck? Okay, sorry. I thought we had photos of them on there. Rob Wood, East Idaho News. I know we have a gazillion photos because we've taken them at so many. So here's Rob. This is an older photo, but that's Rob Wood. And this is probably a more recent one. And here's Lindsay Blake. And here's Ingrid Beatty. And right here on your right, screen right. And Rocky Wixom. This is from another one. That's Rocky right there. This is not from this case, but we did take this picture. There he is. So there's Rocky. There they are. There's your prosecutors. So thank you for asking. I guess we need to update our who's who. It's probably time to go to bed, isn't it? It's almost 8 o'clock. I talked a long time tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night. I'm staying around Boise this weekend. So it will be I'll go out and explore Boise, but we are back in court tomorrow. Courtroom Insider will be back tomorrow night, same time, same place, breaking down the testimony. Keep sending in your questions. If you want one of those shirts, go ahead and order it. Thank you to everyone sending them in. I've got Janet, Carol, Betsy, Denise, Laurel, Michelle, Kathleen, Sabrina, and Elaine in the past couple of minutes. We're excited to send these to you and have the East Idaho News movement all across the globe. Thank you for watching. Go watch all that testimony if you want. If you missed anything, again, here's where you can find the information. East Idaho News, we're live tomorrow morning at 8:30 with the trial. I'll be back here tomorrow night at 6:30. You can follow me on all the social platforms. I'll be happy to see you tomorrow night. Have a good night.